My name is Willy Bolander. I study influence, persuasion, and leadership in selling and sales management, and I teach people how to sell. In this podcast, we'll talk to some of the world's top sales leaders and see what we can learn from them. Welcome to the Sales Lab. Welcome, everyone. This is the conclusion of our three-part conversation with Amy Venezia, Vice President of Talent Acquisition and Development at Plastics Family Americas. This part of the discussion, I just asked her, hey, how can we nail the interview for a sales job? How can we navigate issues like cultural fit during an interview? What can we do to impress a potential employer? Anything and everything we'd ever want to know about nailing that sales interview. Of course, she also leaves us with some recommendations for books that every sales leader should have on their shelf. Hope you get something out of it. There's a great article in Harvard Business Review that I encourage people to read. I believe it's called The Risky Business of Hiring Stars. And it just walks through, it's not rocket science. It just sort of walks through the rationale as to why, somebody who's super successful in one company might not be able to translate that into another company. And there are some outliers that you can drop them in any situation and they'll be just as successful and they're just born winners and good on them. Most of us are not that. And it depends, at least in part. And I know, people are going to squirm when I say it. I'm not trying to diminish the role of the individual. I know you worked hard. I know, but the context matters. There are people who are successful in one company who would not be as successful in another company, in one industry and not in another. If you're used to selling the dominant brand in the marketplace, it might be totally foreign to try to translate that into a startup brand or an unknown, and vice versa. And that's okay. But you really got to think about, even the general idea of best practices. Well, here are the best practices for onboarding. Okay, well, when were these developed? Well, these were developed by a consulting firm in the 80s.
Yes.
Okay. What types of industries were they looking at? Oh, they were looking at industries that no longer exist today. Okay. Yeah. Well, how much of this has any chance of overlapping with our context today? And if you find that there's a lot of it that overlaps, then okay, maybe it makes sense to apply those best practices. And if not, maybe you need to do some homegrown stuff. Maybe you need to do some research. Maybe you need to call some dork at Texas A&M University Industrial Distribution Program, and let's look into it. Let's find out what the best practices for you are, because companies, they're just different sometimes. Yeah. Well, so let me ask you about the other hat you wear. We'll just keep switching hats. So hiring, recruiting. Give us the tips. Give us the lowdown. Sure. How do I get hired by a great company if I'm looking for a sales job?
Yes, I love that. So I encourage everyone to go into sales, especially if you're going to be a recent graduate. I think a misconception that many students share with me on interviews or after, once we've hired them, was I didn't have a sales internship. I didn't have a specific sales job on my resume, and that's a disadvantage. And so I think anyone, regardless of just coming out of school, you can be a mid-career hire. Maybe you had a career in a different industry and a different role entirely. You can still come into a sales role and be extremely successful. So if you have sales on your resume, be prepared to talk about it. We're going to ask lots of questions, but if you already have the interview, that's the hardest part. So if you're already here interviewing, then I just want to know what skills you have. I want to know what personality you have. I want to know what attributes you have that make you incredible. And does that apply to a sales role? So you could be I was working with my brother-in-law a few years back when he was getting ready to graduate, and he had been working at Chipotle, and, he was on the line, and he was just this organized, incredible communicator and just best work ethic, that I've ever met, especially just his generation. He's just so incredible. And he landed himself a really great assistant manager role right out of college. And, a lot of that, when you think about how did he pitch himself, he didn't have those direct skills needed, but he could say, I understand operational efficiency. I'm working at Chipotle and I'm on the line and I know how to communicate with my customers to make sure that they're really happy. I know how to communicate with my teammates. I understand inventory. I understand what's in front of me that I'm going to pull from and what do I need to prep in the back and how do we make this all work. So thinking you can have any sort of job. A lot of students have retail. That's really common. Or, the restaurant industry, that's extremely common to have. And those are some of the best ways to build the most important skill sets that will make you successful. So look at your resume less like, we're going to talk literal. What did you do at JCPenney? I'm going to say, you worked at JCPenney. Got it. You are like me. You didn't have any sales. I'm almost going to put that resume to the side and say, who are you? What makes you great? I love to ask the question, what's the best piece of constructive criticism you've ever received? I'm just going to ask you questions to figure out who you are as a person. And I'm going to ask some difficult questions because like I said earlier, I do want someone who's going to respond versus react. I want someone who's on their feet. I want someone who is willing to admit some of their faults, but not leave it at that. Not just say, here's a weakness, here's some criticism. I'm really unorganized. But I want to hear, I can be and traditionally have been unorganized. Someone gave me that advice. I took that to heart. And I've done these 3 things to better myself. Now, I'm a work in progress. There are still days where I feel a bit unorganized, but I'm getting there and I'm intentional and I'm strategic about getting better. Those questions have nothing to do with your resume. I'm just looking for who you are as a person. So tips and tricks, there's so many, but some big ones I would say, know something about the company before you start the interview. It sounds so obvious. And as a recruiter, I understand you're interviewing with multiple other people. You don't have to know everything about the company. And in fact,
founder's birthday, you might be able to overlook. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it helps if you know, but you don't have to know the founder's birthday. Yeah. No one, we don't even know those things. But do you know generally what industry we're in? Do you know what location or role you're applying for? Sometimes you get people on the phone and they're going, oh, I thought this was this role. And really we're interviewing you for something different. So be organized, be prepared, be polite. Students, if you're going to be doing a Zoom interview, which is pretty common for maybe your second or third interview to kind of be on video, just get a non-distracting background. I have a blank wall behind me for a reason. If I were to turn my camera, you'd see a little more of the office area, not quite so organized. So non-distracting, professional, ask really good questions, and take every question beyond its face value. So when I say, tell me about your internship here, I don't want you to then read me your resume and say, well, I did 8 to 5 and I did these 3 things and that was my main priority. I want you to say, I learned about communication because let me tell you about what an interesting customer base came into this retail store. And I really learned how to navigate when someone was really unhappy. And I learned a lot about myself and my work ethic because my hours were 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I really had to be diligent. And I really had to get up early and be dedicated to my job. So anything that you say, don't just tell me about a job you performed or a function you did. Include in there what personal attribute that helped you hone.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And, think about the person that worked at JCPenney's. Okay, obviously, I don't want you to walk me through the folding process.
Right.
I want you to tell me that, yeah, I know I'm not applying for a closed job right now and, a retail job, or maybe you are. But, here's what I learned about operations. Here's what I learned about simplifying the way you do work so that it's more effective and you're not just running around. You can, stock inventory in this way and it saves you hours of each week, and I try to apply that in that. So you're almost moving up a level of abstraction, right? Talking about the principle, the lesson, the insight that you got from each of those experiences. That makes sense. So I guess the same would apply to, you mentioned an internship. So the same would apply to a club. Okay, I was the treasurer for such a student organization. Yeah. So, okay, so what'd you do? Well, I counted things. Okay, well, well, maybe it's an accounting job. Maybe we do care about those things. But get a little bit deeper, get a little bit more, metaphysical or something about what that did for you.
take it fluffy, and fluffy can be really powerful. When I look at someone's resume and they're a student and they're going to school full time and they're working, I already know a lot about them and I like it because that tells me you're hardworking. You don't, you might be paying for your own education yourself. You're doing multiple things at once and you're obviously graduating and you are employed. So I would reason that you're doing well at both things because you're still doing those activities. So there's so much beyond the literal. So don't feel trapped, especially if you don't feel like you really have a great resume. Think about, okay, I'm going in and I'm literally selling myself. I've got some experience in the working world. It doesn't directly apply, but let me tell you, number one, how excited I am about your company. I'm so thrilled. Thank you for taking the time to do this interview with me. I'm so excited. I have a lot of questions for you if there's time at the end, but I'm really honored to be here. So thank you for your time. Let me tell you about these qualities that I have. And here's where I learned them in the X, Y, and Z clubs and companies and retail work and all of these really important hard jobs that I've had and how I've learned these really great skills. And then how does that apply? So if you're applying for a sales job, saying, I had really irritable customers because I worked at a coffee shop at 5 a.m. Not only do I understand hard work and dedication and time management to make sure I was there on time, but I really saw how my product could affect the customer and how it could make their day and what repeat business, how that could affect the business. And I understand the money that was coming in. And these people were willing to come back day and day again because they got really great coffee every morning. Just trying to tell me you understand something more about the business world tells me, great, I can teach you how to do an activity or sell a specific product. But if you can understand the business world as a concept and customer satisfaction as a concept, and you can show me your hard work and dedication and that give a what factor, that's all I'm looking for. That's all I'm actually really needing from you. We'll teach you the rest.
And so what were some of the experiences that you had before you were going to get hired? What types of things did you point to?
Yes. I had I always worked. I supported myself through college and I would have one or two jobs at any given time. And so I would usually point to that, just some sort of work ethic to say, hey, I'm paying for my education and I'm really proud to be doing that. And here are the attributes that I have. I will be on time. I'm reliable. I'm trustworthy. I get along with most people. I'm going to really bring that to your business. I would really try and come up with some new ideas too. So even if I was in an interview with a dog training facility, that I worked for a little bit, the idea was, hey, what about your website? If I have a few extra hours, I know I'm going for an office admin role, but if I have a few extra hours, I'm a marketing major right now. Could I play around with your website? So just trying to pique their interest to say, okay, how can she be kind of that employee plus? And how can, maybe a lot of people can apply for an admin role, but someone who can do admin and a little bit of marketing, that could be advantageous.
A little differentiation. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And it was interesting too. You asked about kind of my interview process. Thinking about who I was interviewing with, I just would recommend a student to also be interviewing the company. We always think, okay, we're being interviewed, we're putting our best foot forward, but what are you observing about the company as well? And I interviewed at a lot of places and my goal was to have as many interviews as I could. And people flew me to different states and I interviewed different companies and I was really honored. And some companies blew me away. And some, when the boss would leave, I'd say, hey, how's the sales job? And they'd say, look, you got to get this many dials in. Okay, what if you don't get those dials? We just blank dial, So, whoa, oh my gosh, okay, that's probably not the company for me. And so be creative too while you're interviewing to talk to more than just the person who's hiring you. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, when I come in for my pre-employment testing or for my interview, can I just take an extra hour and hang out with the sales team and just kind of shadow what they're doing and ask questions? Because I think you pick up on a lot of that culture fit. You say, I'm extremely hardworking. I'm dedicated. I'm going to outwork everyone. I'm clever. I'm smart. I pick things up quickly. I've had a lot of different roles. I can apply myself really solidly in different industries. Are you going to take advantage of that? Or are you going to honor that? Are you going to respect that? Are you going to reward that? Or is that going to go in a different direction? I think talking to as many people as possible is a really good idea.
I love the idea that the company is being interviewed. I can't tell you how many companies I've seen in these situations that is not, they're not aware that they're also being interviewed, you know? And yeah, I get it. You know, they've been told in some news story that all kids need jobs and they can't find jobs and they think that they have the gold nugget that everybody's going to want.
Yeah.
And, you know, for qualified candidates, that's not the case. They get many offers for
Multiple.
as much or sometimes more than what you're going to offer. And, you know,
Yeah.
they're choosing based on a lot of different factors here. And one of them, it turns out, is if you showed your true colors in the in the interview process at some point,
Yeah.
and they said, "Oh yeah, I just remembered I don't work with terrible people. I just remember that. I don't work for organizations that are run by horrible humans, and I know I'm not going to take this job." It's like, yeah, you know, they might ask a gotcha question or try to,
Yeah.
you know, get you uncomfortable in some way that just seems arbitrary or cruel.
Yeah.
And if they do that, let them do it, because then
Yes.
you know, oh, you found out about me. Well, I got news for you.
Yeah.
I just found out about you.
Yeah. And I would say too,
Oh
just
yeah,
to be yourself in the interview, because just like what you're saying, when I was interviewing I was interviewing with primarily sales companies. So I kind of knew the role I was going for, but some were transactional sales. I certainly am very happy I took the relationship sales route, just my personality. Personally, I really liked that. You know, long term, I want you as a customer today, but hopefully for life. I don't want to start again tomorrow. But, you know, when I was going in, I kind of knew this is a transactional job. This is a relationship job. And I remember being asked, do you like transactional or relationship sales? You know, kind of the classic question. And I just would write whatever company that was, you know, today I like transactional, today I like relationship, because my goal was to get offers, and it worked. And I wish I didn't do that, because I wish I wanted a job so bad. I wanted to make sure my future was secure. That was really important. But if you're honest and you're true, it's just better to be upfront and say, honestly, I'm more about relationship selling. I understand that your company is a bit more of a transactional technology sale, for example. And actually, that's one of my questions for you. And just how does that work for someone like myself that is really driven by relationships and finds a lot of value in that? How do you think I could be successful in a transactional environment? And turn it on them and ask them a question. And you're not saying, oh, I'm not open to this. It's actually, please convince me, because your company really impresses me.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah. What do I not know? How am I? Am I looking at this wrong? And if I am, how? Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's great.
And just be honest. You know, you don't have to morph yourself into what these companies want. Be yourself, and you're going to find a really great fit. That's at least 90% a good fit. You know, there's always some part of your job you don't love doing every day, the nitty gritty work or the paperwork, but be honest in your interview process. And there's nothing wrong with that. Let them sell you a little bit on the company too.
Good. Now, keeping an eye on the time here. I think we got enough time for maybe two more questions. I know the one I have to end with. So leading up to that, I'm wondering if you have any interviewing horror stories that you wouldn't mind sharing, just for entertainment value. Maybe somebody will get learn a lesson out of it, but I'm just curious.
Oh, I've had too many. Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Yes, I definitely have.
We should have started with that. Yeah,
I know this could be a whole session. Okay, I would say my favorite was this guy on a bike, and he shared with me early on that he was riding his bike because he was breathing really heavy. And I'm going, okay, you know, what are you at the gym, or what's going on? You know, are you nervous? It's okay. We can take a good deep breath here. And he's like, no, I'm riding my bike. You know, he's outside. You can hear cars honking, and he's physically.
So in the phone interview,
phone interview. Yes, I'm hearing noise, breathing. You know, so he's riding a bike, and
the little bell.
Yeah, and he picked up the call. And shouldn't have, you know, just a hello, which I always like for people to say, this is Amy. You know, that's just a good tip. If you're expecting an interview at 2:30, you pick up, this is Amy. Great, Amy. This is so-and-so. So just kind of a good hello, breathing heavy. Definitely had forgotten about our interview, and then still decided to take the time for our interview, which I much would have preferred him to say, this is not my best foot forward. Please forgive me. I had this marked for another time. Out of respect for you, could we have a conversation another day? But he decided to proceed. And, you know, so it was just kind of this disheveled, disjointed conversation where you're on the street and you're getting a workout in at the same time. So didn't know a whole lot about the company, didn't really remember what role. So those are just the basic things you can do. Who are you interviewing with? What role is it? Be prepared and be in a quiet place at the time of your interview. But I've had someone cry in an interview before, and I'm a really kind, compassionate interviewer. I'm going to give you an out. If you're really struggling, I'm not going to torture you. I'll move on to another question. And I had a really sweet young lady cry because she could tell she was bombing it. And, so we had to talk that out. So yeah, I've seen it all. I really have.
Wow.
There's some interesting candidates out there for sure.
Well, it's high pressure. I get it. And if you've been doing a lot of interviews, and if you're really questioning your, the next phase of your life, and it's easy to slip up.
Yeah.
And then my last question is book recommendations. What are some books that every sales leader, every salesperson should have on their shelf?
I brought a few to the desk today because I just, I think these are just some really good ones. So before I give you, because I have, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5, but before I list those, I was talking to my husband about this. And I said, what, we were kind of comparing books. He's in the world of business. And I said, what do you think? And he said, I think salespeople should read books about things their customers are interested in. I thought, oh my gosh, that's not my idea, so I won't claim it. But I thought I should share it because it's great. There are so many sales books, and there are some excellent sales books out there. But there's no shortage, right? There's no shortage of sales books, and many I think we've repeated over and over. So what's your customer interested in? And maybe do some reading on that. Okay, some recommendations. The book called When. And this is by Daniel Pink, and it is about time management, how to schedule your day so that you are as successful as possible when your customers are more receptive to hearing new ideas. It's really the philosophy of time and time management and effectiveness. And I think it's just very different. It's different than a lot of your kind of classic sales books. Something that we read as a company when I was going through our leadership program was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And it kind of harnesses the concepts of the Navy SEALs to being an extreme leader. So when push comes to shove, who are you? What defines you? How do you lead a team? How do you lead them to success, encourage them? How do you deal with failures? That book, I think, has had a really serious impact on my life and how I thought a leader should be and maybe how I'd seen it displayed. And after reading that, I'm going, no, it's about humility. It's about giving praise to your team. It's not about taking the glory. There's some CEOs that go, man, when I retire, this company's going to be lost without me, And I remember our CEO retiring after 18 years, and he's going, no, you guys have been so empowered and you know what you're doing. You're going to be better without me. That's a great leader. It's not how sad we are once you've left. It's what greatness you've left behind for us. So that one's really great.
Well, and if that were to come to fruition, that's just a failure of succession planning. That's a leadership failure. That's right back at them.
True. Because it's out of that ego. They want the glory and they want to be so incredible. You can't live without me, but that's not a real leader. A real leader has a team that can go on. There's people in my team that I think are so great. I'm going, you're probably going to be my boss at some point. I hope you are. I hope you're president of this company down the road. I think a great leader wants really great things for their team. They don't have to be the one in the limelight at every given moment. So love those. And then Gap Selling. I think Gap Selling is just a really great book about value. So how do you add value? It's not just about price. It's about what you bring to the table from a value perspective. And how do you identify what are the gaps in what a customer is getting? And how can you fill that with your product, service, expertise to get the sale?
Perfect. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for those recommendations. And thank you for sharing with us. And hopefully I'll see you sooner than later.
Yes.
Fewer rainstorms and travel problems.
Yes, fewer ice storms. No, this has been great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on. This has been kind of fun to talk through. So appreciate it.
That's it for this interview. I hope you got something valuable out of it. Of course, if you did, be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast on whatever app you use to listen. Also, share this with your colleagues and friends, and let's continue to have a deeper discussion on all things related to selling and sales leadership. See you next time in the Sales Lab.